Chapter 1. The Calm Before the Storm. Emily Thompson stood at the edge of her front porch in late September, watching fiery leaves drift down onto the lawn like embers from an unseen blaze. In the fading golden light of dusk, her mind drifted back to memories of the early days of her marriage, bright, carefree times, when she and Jacob would laugh over spilled coffee in the kitchen or linger indoors on rainy afternoons, sipping herbal tea and planning vacations that never quite happened. They inhaled deeply the cool, slightly earthy autumn air. Their two-story home on Maplewood Drive in suburban Cleveland was exactly what she had envisioned when they met in college. 4 bedrooms, a sprawling backyard bordered by tall maples, and a cozy living room with a bay window that caught the morning light. They had moved in 3 years ago, when Emily, then freshly graduated with a marketing degree, had accepted a position at a mid-sized advertising agency downtown. Jacob, also a marketing specialist, had transferred to a branch of the same firm, giving them matching paychecks and a semblance of stability. On most Sunday evenings, they cooked chicken piccata while tracking down a documentary on Netflix, a deep dive into the revival of urban beekeeping or the rise and fall of 19th-century baseball teams. Their routine felt unshakable, like a series of stepping stones leading them hand in hand toward a future neither dared discuss in detail. But recently, that sense of certainty had started to crack. In the preceding weeks, Jacob's habit of disappearing into his home office, with only a mumbled late meeting or client call to explain his absence, had become routine. At first, Emily chalked it up to a demanding client, an important tech startup in Silicon Valley, perhaps. Jacob had begun talking up this new account with an intensity usually reserved for his hobbies, practically glowing when he described brainstorming sessions and late-night strategy calls. Yet Emily had sensed a shift in him that went beyond long hours. He had grown quieter in the mornings, offering just a quick kiss as he headed out the door. Their coffee table conversations had dwindled into quick exchanges about whether the dishwasher needed emptying or if Max, their 4-year-old golden retriever, required a vet check. Gone were the extended lunches each shared over jokes about old college friends. Even their good night texts, once a string of flirty emojis, had become perfunctory. Night. See you tomorrow. She and the orphaned warmth in her chest felt stalled in the afternoons. Emily tried to reassure herself that it was simply the stresses of their mid-30s lives catching up to them. She knew that the marketing industry could be cutthroat, and that Jacob's competitive spirit sometimes led him to spend every waking hour on a pitch deck or sales presentation. But still, the nagging thought refused to be quieted. Something felt off. As she lingered on the porch, she tried to pinpoint the moment when the undercurrent of her marriage had shifted. Was it 4 weeks ago when Jacob returned home well past midnight, recounting a client dinner in downtown Cleveland? He had insisted it wasn't a big deal, that the high-roller investors had insisted on drinks inside a speakeasy high above the city. He described the evening with a theatrical flourish, jazz musicians playing soft horns, dim amber lights flickering over mahogany bars. But when Emily asked if she could meet these investors sometime, Jacob said they were just a brief partnership, nothing formal. A quick shrug, a dismissive wave of his hand, and the conversation was over. That shrug had felt dismissive, the first scratch of a worry forming under Emily's skin.
2.1 Subtle Changes. The week after that late-night story, Emily found a red scarf tucked into Jacob's Lexus when she dropped him off and later picked him up from the office one brisk Tuesday morning. It lay partially unfolded, the silky fabric catching the breeze as she opened the door. She recognized it immediately, a fringed Merlot silk scarf she had bought at a boutique last winter and never seen again. When she brought it up over dinner that night, "Who's been borrowing my scarf, Jay? I thought I lost it at that holiday party last year." Jacob merely squinted at her, offered a half-hearted shrug, said it must be a hand-me-down from a coworker. He wound the conversation into a different direction, praising her salmon dish as the best he'd ever tasted, and she let it drop. But the next day, Jacob left for work at 7:15 a.m., earlier than usual, and Emily discovered the scarf again, tangled around the base of his laptop stand in his home office. Her heart pounded at the sight. She took a photo and sent it to her best friend Marta under the message, "This can't be right, can it?" Marta, an elementary school counselor with a no-nonsense attitude, texted back almost immediately, "You deserve an explanation. Something's fishy. Why wouldn't he say whose it is?" The two traded a flurry of messages that afternoon, Marta pressing Emily to trust her gut. Emily replied that she was trying, that maybe it was nothing. But at night, when the lamps cast long shadows in their bedroom, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining Jacob's office partner, a woman in a business suit, gently tucking Emily's precious scarf into her bag. Over the following weekends, Jacob's absences lengthened. He began working Saturdays, citing project deadlines, and Emily started to wonder if he was addicted to the rush of bringing in a big account. But then came the next clue. Late-night texts to his phone coming in around midnight, just when most reasonable people were winding down. Emily remembered a night 2 weeks ago when she felt something on her tablet and quickly reached for it. A message popped up. "Ready for tomorrow? Can't wait to see you." It was from Elle, not Lisa. But a series of hearts followed. Her breath caught. She scrolled up, but found nothing more, only that single loaded line. She replayed the conversation in her head. Last Wednesday, she had asked Jacob if he was staying late. He had smiled and said, "Just the usual, Em." That same M nickname brimming with feigned affection. She tried to push the thought away. Maybe it was marketing slang, a code word for a deliverable. But the heart emojis, those seemed personal.
2.2. Anxiety mounts. During their morning routine, Emily's cold brew, Jacob's cappuccino, they rarely spoke of these things. Yet the tension simmered beneath the surface. A plate someone accidentally dropped in the kitchen. The click of high heels on the hardwood hallway. A stray pair of heels in the closet that didn't belong to Emily. By mid-September, every time Jacob's Lexus pulled into the driveway, Emily's heart leapt in her chest, an odd mix of longing and dread. If he pulled in at the usual hour, she relaxed, chalking up her anxiety to overthinking. But if he came home late, say after 8 p.m., her muscles coiled in silent alarm. She'd leave a dish unwashed, stare at the ceiling, replay old conversations, second-guessing every word, every sigh. One Friday, Jacob came home at 1:15 a.m. The floor was cold under Emily's bare feet when she crept downstairs, drawn by the light under the kitchen door. In the dim glow, she saw Jacob, elbow on the counter, phone pressed to his ear. He was whispering urgently, "No, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Just please be ready." His voice had that hushed tone people use when they don't want to be overheard. He tucked the phone into his jacket pocket just as Emily stepped in. He looked up startled, his face a canvas of guilt and embarrassment. "Em, you're up," he said, voice cracking. He set his coffee mug down and moved toward her, eyes pleading. I had to finish this client campaign for Morley Tech. They've been breathing down my neck." He reached out to hug her. She felt the tension in his shoulders. The warmth of his body was there, but his words felt like a paper shield, translucent, insufficient. Emily backed away softly. "Jacob, why are you always whispering into your phone?" she asked, voice shaking more from exhaustion than anything else. She glanced at his jacket, noticed a stray strand of red fabric peeking from one pocket, her Merlot scarf again. He saw her look and quickly brushed the scarf out of sight.
Just work stuff, Em. You know how these tech clients can be." The briefness of his response felt like a slap. He pulled her close, but his arms felt too tight, as though he were holding her to keep his own truth inside. That night, Jacob lay awake in bed as Jacob snoozed next to her, his face relaxed, oblivious to her sleepless turmoil. She stared at the darkness. Imagine him with someone else. Laughter in hushed tones, whispered promises, stolen kisses. Her breath came shallow, heartbeat like a hammer. By 3 a.m., she snapped. She got out of bed, opened his laptop bag sitting by the bedroom door, unzipped the laptop compartment, and removed his phone. She fumbled through apps, text messages, call logs, email. Her hands shook violently, tears blurring her vision. In the messaging app, she found threads. L, Liv, L, names that could be any woman. One message read, "Can't wait for tonight. I'll be alone after 8. Another, "I miss you every second." No details about who L was, but the tone was unmistakable. Emily shut the screen hard, clutched her chest as though someone had thrown a punch, then quietly returned to bed, placing his phone back undetected, and lay awake until dawn, tears streaming silently down her cheeks.
3. Chapter 3. The Decision to Follow. 3.1. Gathering Courage. For the next 2 days, Emily went through the motions of work and home life with a numb, perfunctory energy. She told herself she was imagining things, that they'd talk over the weekend. On Saturday morning, Jacob pulled on his suit jacket and kissed her on the forehead before departing. "Big meeting today," he said. "I'll be back around 3. Emily watched him drive off, breathing shallowly. She thought back to his whispering on the phone, to the red scarf, to the midnight texts. She tried to rationalize. Maybe 8 p.m. referred to a late-night conference call. Maybe L was Laura, his coworker, and they were simply discussing an upcoming pitch. But she'd been telling herself that since August, and each day felt heavier. A sense of impending doom settled over her. By 9 a.m., she made up her mind. She would follow him. She packed a small bag, her phone charger, her car keys, and a water bottle, sent a quick text to Marta, "I'm going downtown to check on Jay. Call if you don't hear from me." She intended Marta to be on standby, just in case. With trembling fingers, she slid into her Honda Civic, set the GPS for Jacob's office building on West 14th Street, and began the 25-minute drive downtown. Every red light felt excruciating, her heart pounding in her ears so loudly she could barely hear traffic passing. By 9:45 a.m., she was 2 blocks away from the nondescript mid-rise office complex where Jacob had his big meeting. She parked facing away, 2 parallel rows over, so she wouldn't draw attention. She left the car running, just enough to keep the radio on low, a classical station that felt soothing, if only barely. In the back seat, she stuffed her purse and keys, took a deep breath, and stepped out, smoothing her hair. She wore a simple blue blouse, dark jeans, and flats, nothing attention-grabbing. She moved swiftly but discreetly toward the building, each footstep feeling like a drumbeat. 3.2. The Tension of Waiting. The lobby was quiet, only 2 other people waiting, a young woman scrolling on her phone and an older man at the reception desk, idly glancing at a stack of envelopes. A dried bouquet of dead flowers sat on a side table, elbows peeling like pages in a forgotten book. Emily took a seat against the far wall, trying to match her breathing to the gentle hum of the AC vents overhead. She checked the time, 9:52 a.m., too early for a big meeting in her mind. Yet when she called Jacob's cell phone, it went straight to voicemail. She left a tense, quiet message. "Jacob, it's Emily. I stopped by because I was worried. Call me." She hung up, sat back, and pressed her phone to her chest, feeling its pulse vibrate in tandem with her own. From the corner of her eye, she saw him, Jacob Thompson, suit crisp, tie straight, walking through the revolving doors. His face was a mask of mild concern. When he entered the lobby, he froze upon seeing her.
His cheeks had that familiar slight flush he only got when he'd been hiding something too long. Emily stood. Her legs shook, but she planted her feet firmly. "Jacob," she said, voice small but steady. "What are you doing here?" He exhaled sharply, looking torn. "Emily, please, Before he could finish, a woman appeared from behind him, a tall, slender brunette in a charcoal skirt suit, leather folder tucked under her arm. When she saw Emily, her eyes widened in shock, mouth parting for a moment, then closing. She was mid-30s, polished, hair in a tight chignon. She looked like she knew exactly who Emily was.
Emily's stomach hollowed out. The woman, tall and composed, approached. Emily realized suddenly, her coworkers must have warned her that the boss's wife might show up. This was no random encounter. It was the moment of truth. "Emily?" The woman's voice said her name in clipped syllables, as though tasting it. "I'm Lisa. Lisa Hernandez, Jacob's colleague. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Jake swallowed. "Emily, this isn't what it looks like." But Emily already knew what it looked like. Him and Lisa stepping off the elevator together. Him holding her hand just a fraction too long. The red silk scarf she'd found over and over again, brushing up against his laptop. The late texts. The whispers behind closed doors. It all converged at once. An avalanche of unshakable evidence. She didn't speak. Her eyes traced his collarbone, his tie, his face. She saw guilt, fear, regret. She realized that for months she had been blind, willing herself not to see. And in that silence, she felt more betrayed than ever. Lisa squeezed Jacob's arm. "Emily, we can explain." Emily shook her head, voice brittle. "There's nothing to explain." She turned and left, heart hammering, each step echoing like gunshots. Jacob called out her name, but she ignored him, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Outside, the sky was gray, as though mourning with her. She jogged back to her car without looking behind. Her fingers trembled as she fumbled with her keys to lock the doors. The engine roared to life. She kept the classical station on, but the treble violin notes felt sharp, like shards of glass in her brain. She drove home in a haze, barely registering red lights or passing cars. The route that used to bring her calm, along River Road beside the Cuyahoga, felt rigged with landmines. She tried to call Marta, but Marta didn't pick up. She left yet another trembling voicemail. "Something's wrong. He's cheating with Lisa. I saw them." She arrived home at 10:15 a.m. The house was quiet. The front door stood slightly ajar. The welcome mat flipped on its side, as though knocked over in a hurry. The foyer light was off, and Max, their golden retriever, trotted up from the kitchen, tail wagging, confused at her sudden presence. He sniffed her legs, licked her knee, oblivious to human heartbreak. Emily sank to her knees, burying her face into Max's warm, silky fur. His fur smelled like home, like couch cushions and rainwater. She took a deep breath, his gentle snuffle grounding her. But underneath was a churning abyss. She felt empty, as though someone had siphoned out her heartbeat and replaced it with ice. She rose slowly, tears stinging her eyes. She headed upstairs to their bedroom, where Jacob's scent still lingered. Musky soap, his cologne, something faintly masculine. She walked to the dresser and opened his top drawer. Inside were socks, neatly folded t-shirts, and the red scarf wound around the drawer corner. She removed it carefully, running her fingers along the silky edge until she found a loose thread and held it between her thumb and forefinger, feeling the smooth fabric like a lie she could never unsee.
Turning on her heel, she walked downstairs to find Jacob on the couch, slumped, tired. He looked at her with that mingled shame and despair look when he realized the scope of the damage he had done. She let the silence stretch between them, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and Max's labored breathing at her heels. Finally, she spoke, her voice distant. "You lied to me. You've been lying to me for months." Jacob's chest heaved. He closed his eyes, reached for her hand. "Em, please, I never wanted to hurt you." She pulled her hand back, pacing along the coffee table. "Tell me what's happening," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Who is she? How long? Jacob ran a hand through his hair, flopped more fully onto the couch. Her name is Lisa. We work together. It started back in July, during an evening out for a client meeting. He paused, blinking back tears. It started innocent enough, but then one thing led to another. I never meant to fall in love with her. You have to believe me. Emily's chest constricted, lungs burning. She closed her eyes, recalling every detail she'd witnessed. The way Jacob had stepped out of the lobby with Lisa's arm around his waist, the flicker of her eyes upon seeing Emily, the way Jacob's face had gone pale. It was all too real. July, she repeated. That's 2 months. 2 months of whispers and lies. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees. All this time, you were sleeping with my friend? No, my coworker, my partner. The woman whose birthday party you mysteriously attended last month? Jacob's face fell. He placed his hands over his eyes. I know, Em. I'm sorry. I was weak. I felt alone, and she was there. He looked up at her, anguish in his eyes. But it meant nothing. It was a mistake. It meant nothing? Emily echoed, her voice fracturing. She could taste the bitterness of betrayal on her tongue. She dropped her head into her hands, silent tears pooling as she struggled to breathe. Max lay next to her, big brown eyes concerned. Turning on her heel, she walked downstairs to find Jacob on the couch, slumped, tired. He looked at her with that mingled shame and despair look when he realized the scope of the damage he had done. She let the silence stretch between them, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and Max's labored breathing at her heels. Finally, she spoke, her voice distant. You lied to me. You've been lying to me for months. Jacob's chest heaved. He closed his eyes, reached for her hand. Em, please, I never wanted to hurt you. She pulled her hand back, pacing along the coffee table. Tell me what's happening, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Who is she? How long? Jacob ran a hand through his hair, flopped more fully onto the couch. Her name is Lisa. We work together. It started back in July, during an evening out for a client meeting. He paused, blinking back tears. It started innocent enough, but then one thing led to another. I never meant to fall in love with her. You have to believe me. Emily's chest constricted, lungs burning. She closed her eyes, recalling every detail she'd witnessed. The way Jacob had stepped out of the lobby with Lisa's arm around his waist, the flicker of her eyes upon seeing Emily, the way Jacob's face had gone pale. It was all too real. July, she repeated. That's 2 months. 2 months of whispers and lies. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees. All this time, you were sleeping with my friend? No, my coworker, my partner. The woman whose birthday party you mysteriously attended last month? Jacob's face fell. He placed his hands over his eyes. I know, Em. I'm sorry. I was weak. I felt alone, and she was there. He looked up at her, anguish in his eyes. But it meant nothing. It was a mistake. It meant nothing? Emily echoed, her voice fracturing. She could taste the bitterness of betrayal on her tongue. She dropped her head into her hands, silent tears pooling as she struggled to breathe. Max lay next to her, big brown eyes concerned.
Together, they went through Jacob's phone logs. They screenshotted messages, email receipts, anything that painted a timeline. Every piece of evidence felt like a nail hammered into Emily's chest. But she also recognized the necessity. If she chose divorce, she needed facts. Yet for every message she discovered, her guilt surged, like betraying Jacob by uncovering these private conversations. That Tuesday, Emily made an appointment with a family lawyer, Miss Harrington, in Shaker Heights. At 2 p.m., she sat in a cramped office, cream-colored walls, leather couch, diplomas from Case Western lined the shelves, and laid out everything. Miss Harrington was gentle but direct. You have the right to know everything. If you choose to separate, we can discuss asset division, spousal support, custody of Max. Emily shook her head. Right now, I need to know what I want. I'm not ready to file any papers. All I want is some space. The lawyer nodded. That's fine. Take your time.
But document everything. Keep any texts, emails, receipts. If things change, you'll be ready. The gravity of the moment settled in. Emily left with Miss Harrington's business card and a sense that her world was fracturing irreversibly.
4.3 Conversations and Confessions. At home, Emily finally agreed to talk to Jacob. They sat at opposite end of the kitchen island, she on a bar stool, he on one of the stools she had pulled closer. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, meaningless against the deluge of memories that flooded her mind. "Why?" she asked, voice flat. "Why her?" Jacob ran a hand through his hair, eyes red. "I don't know. It wasn't supposed to happen. We started as work collaborators, helping each other on presentations, sharing snacks at 2 a.m. when we were both stressed. It was easy. They made me feel seen at a time I felt invisible." He swallowed hard. "But that's no excuse. I should have stopped it at the start." Emily listened, head resting on her palm. She imagined them in an impersonal conference room. 2 laptops open, fingers poised above keyboards, the scent of stale coffee, the dull buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. The moment they let conversations slip into personal confessions, lamenting lonely nights, confessing fears about careers, the shift had occurred. And gradually, that shift became something they couldn't rein in. "Were you planning to leave me?" He exhaled sharply. "No, I don't want to leave you. I don't know. I want to figure out what happened." He paused, then whispered, "I was miserable. We drifted apart, and I thought you wouldn't notice. But all along, I was slipping into her arms." Her eyes burned. "Miserable? That's how you felt in this marriage?" She looked down at her hands. "I never wanted you to feel like that. I tried to—" He interrupted gently. "No, Em, it's not your fault. We both changed. Maybe we never truly talked about how we felt. We fell into routines. I took you for granted." His voice cracked. "I love you. That's what makes this so horrible." He reached out and took her hand. Emily stared at his palm for a moment. Warm, calloused from years of gripping a steering wheel and a keyboard mouse. She let him hold it, though she didn't quite trust the warmth. Over the next hour, they shared more. Jacob confessed that he had been splitting his time between a short-term Airbnb near Lisa's apartment, just a few miles away, ever since July. He talked about the guilt that gnawed at him, how he tried to break it off in August, but Lisa threatened to go public with rumors of a non-work relationship if he left. He was in a twisted, emotional hostage situation, and every day felt like a negotiation. Emily listened, hearing his regret, but also feeling the knives twist deeper inside. She realized that while he had tried to end it, he hadn't truly. He'd lingered in the guilt, afraid of confronting Lisa's anger and risking exposure. She felt torn, anger at Lisa for manipulating him, anger at Jacob for staying entangled, anger at herself for not seeing sooner. By the time the conversation ended, they had not reached any resolution. Jacob had apologized endlessly. Emily had cried in exhaustion, trying to sort through the maze of betrayal, remorse, and love that still clung to her like a second skin.
5. Chapter 5. The Crossroads. 1. The decision to wait or act. The days after their kitchen conversation felt like wading through quicksand. Emily couldn't sleep. She spent nights pacing the hallway, her reflection flickering in the dark windows, wondering if this was the new normal. Jacob tried to sit with her, hold her hand, but she would flinch, recoiling as though even his touch was a lie. On the third night, Marta came back, this time to stay. Marta insisted on setting up a makeshift office in the guest room. She brought a stack of old magazines, yoga DVDs, and granola bars, anything to coax Emily back to herself. Marta drove them to yoga classes, forced Emily to eat salads and fruit. She helped her journal, writing prompts like, "List 3 reasons you deserve truth," "Describe your happiest memory with Jacob," and "What do you fear about alone time?" One Sunday afternoon, Marta found Emily in the backyard, crying into her notebook as the leaves rained down. She knelt beside her, reading over her shoulder. Emily's pages were raw confessions. "I feel so stupid for not knowing. I miss his voice, but I can't stand to hear it. Would I ever forgive him if he sincerely begged?" "Do you think you can forgive him?" Marta asked softly, wrapping an arm around her. Emily shook her head. "I don't know. I'm not sure I even want to stay married, but I'm not sure I can leave either. I'm leaving means admitting it's over, really over, but staying means reliving this pain every day." Marta squeezed her. "You don't have to decide right now."
5.2. Reaching out for support. That Monday morning, Emily called her therapist, Dr. Patel. When she sat in his plush, calming office an hour later, she offered only one line: "I don't know what to do." Dr. Patel was quiet, letting the silence hang until Emily uncrossed her arms and continued. "I thought our marriage was solid. Now I feel adrift." She paused. "He says he loves me, but I—" She trailed off, tears welling again. "I don't know if love is enough." Dr. Patel nodded gently. "You've experienced a significant betrayal. Trust has been broken. When that happens, it's natural to question everything. For now, our goal is to help you find clarity, not to push you toward a decision." For the next hour, they talked about boundaries. Emily needed time away from Jacob and vice versa. He suggested a temporary separation, allow Emily to move into her parents' spare bedroom for 2 weeks. Distance, he said, would help her see whether she missed him or was relieved by the separation. Emily spent that night packing a suitcase. She sat on her bed, holding Jacob's faded Oxford shirt in her lap, the one he frequently wore to early meetings. That shirt had once been a symbol of stability. Now it reeked of deception. She folded it slowly, placed it in her suitcase, zipped it shut. In the morning, she would leave.
5.3. Separation. On Tuesday at dawn, Emily sneaked out. Jacob was still asleep on the couch, snoring softly. She paused at the base of the stairs, glanced back at his prone form, the man she loved, the man who had betrayed her. Then, resolutely, she climbed the stairs, grabbed her suitcase, and walked out into the cold morning air. She drove an hour east to her parents' house in Mentor, the suburbs transformed by autumn's riot of color. Her mother greeted her with a warm hug and a casserole. Her father offered a quiet nod, as they had both long suspected something was amiss. She spent that night in the guest room, waking countless times to the sound of her own breathing. For 2 weeks, Emily remained there. She copied down daily routes to work from her phone, so Jacob could drop her documents off at her parents' house. They didn't speak beyond the most necessary logistical texts. Picked up file from lawyer, signed letter. Max is at the vet with Marta. Dinner is in the fridge. In that liminal space, Emily explored life without Jacob. She reconnected with old friends and mentor. Sophie, the neighbor who waved at her as a child. Erin, her high school best friend who now taught English at a local high school. Sophie took her to yoga classes. Erin drove her to coffee shops. They talked about everything except Jacob, allowing Emily to breathe. One crisp Saturday, Emily visited the Mentor Headlands beach on Lake Erie. The wind whipped across the dunes, water slapping against rocks in a rhythmic pulse. She walked barefoot on the damp sand, watched waves breaking under an overcast sky. Max bounded beside her, tail wagging, tongue lolling. In that moment, she felt something shift, a glimmer of peace, an unaccustomed sense of self outside of Emily Thompson, wife. She was just Emily, broken, yes, but perhaps salvageable.
6. Chapter 6. Reckoning and Return. 6.1. Jacob's Journey. Meanwhile, back in their Maplewood drive home, Jacob Thompson's life had become an echo chamber of regret and longing. On the first day of separation, he drove to the office late, lingering outside for a few moments, staring at the building's facade. He dialed Lisa's number, but hung up before she answered. He wanted to break things off, but feared her wrath if he tried to end it over the phone. He called his sister Teresa in Chicago. Teresa was the middle sibling, older than Jacob by 2 years, younger than Emily's husband. She was blunt. "Get your act together, Jacob. This isn't you. You love Emily. Fix this." He started going to therapy, reluctantly, on Dr. Patel's recommendation. In his first session, he confessed each lie. The excuses about late client dinners, the business trip fibs, the clandestine messaging. He described how he and Lisa's working relationship had subtly migrated into something else. Coffee breaks turning into karaoke nights. Shared late-night coding sessions turning into whispered confessions. He admitted that when he realized he'd fallen for her, he froze, terrified to tell Emily, terrified to lose both her and Lisa. So he stayed tangled in a web of lies. Dr. Patel didn't judge, but did push him. "What do you want, Jacob? Do you want to save your marriage or end it? Be honest with yourself first." He left that session with a knot in his stomach. The prospect of a life without Emily, her laughter, her support, her unwavering belief in him drove him to tears. In the parking lot, he sat behind the wheel, pressing his forehead against the steering wheel, promising himself to make amends. A few days later, he ended things with Lisa. The phone call was brutal. She yelled accusations, threats to tell everyone at the office their secret if he abandoned her. He begged her to stop, explaining he was returning to his wife, that he was done. She hung up after telling him to "come find me if you want me back." Even though he was free of Lisa, guilt clung to him like tar. He spent evenings alone in their living room, photos of their wedding on the mantel looking back at him with accusing eyes. He wished he could take back every lie, every text, every sidelong glance. He replayed Emily's face when she saw him with Lisa that morning in the lobby. That shock, etched into her features, haunted him.
6.2. Emily's return to Cleveland. 2 weeks into separation, Emily received a text from Jacob. "Can we talk? I'll wait anywhere." She stared at the message on her phone for 10 minutes before responding, "Meet me at home at 7 p.m. She didn't know if she was ready, that she wanted to see him, to confront the reason she might never trust him again. At 7 p.m., she pulled into their driveway. The maple tree's leaves burned red and gold in the fading light. The front porch light was on, casting a soft glow on the steps. She stepped out of her car, chest tight with anticipation, and entered the house. It was silent. No Max bounding to greet her, no Jacob pacing nervously. She called his name softly. "Jacob?" He emerged from the office hallway. He looked uncannily like the man she once knew. Suit crisp, hair slightly mussed as though he'd run a hand through it. His face, though, was drawn and tired. He took a step toward her. "Emily," he whispered. He placed his briefcase on the floor, walked the remaining distance, and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. They sat on the edge of the couch, neither knowing who would speak first. Finally, Jacob exhaled. "I'm so sorry. These 2 weeks have been hell. I've realized that losing you is the worst thing that could happen to me." Emily drew a shaky breath. "I've had time to think too. I don't know what to feel. When I'm with you, I want the man I married, but I also feel terrified. Terrified you'll lie again." She closed her eyes, tasting the words before she continued. "I need to know you choose me, fully, without hesitation." Jacob nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I choose you, Emily. I want to try, if you'll let me." She opened her eyes, measured him, his sincerity, his regret. She didn't say yes right away. She needed more.
6.3. Rebuilding Trust. For the next month, they began the slow, agonizing process of rebuilding. They agreed on a set of ground rules. 1. Complete transparency. Jacob would give Emily access to his phone, his laptop, his calendar. No locked doors, no hidden messages. 2. Couples therapy. Twice a week, they attended sessions with Dr. Patel to address the underlying issues in their marriage: communication breakdown, unmet needs, emotional distance. 3. Weekly relationship check-ins. Every Wednesday evening, they sat down, no phones allowed, and talked about how they felt, what triggered anxieties, whether they felt heard. In their first therapy session together, they laid everything on the table. Emily described the pain of the betrayal. Jacob described his loneliness and fear. Dr. Patel guided them to identify patterns: how Emily tended to withdraw when stressed, she had always internalized anxieties rather than share them, and how Jacob, in turn, misinterpreted her silence as disinterest, driving him to seek comfort elsewhere. They also realized they had let routines replace genuine connection. Their nights had been consumed by exhaustion, lickety-split dinners, then mindless scrolling on their phones until they fell asleep. They used to dance slowly in the living room for old jazz records. They used to write each other silly notes hidden in lunchboxes. That intimacy had eroded over the years. As part of rebuilding, they reinstated these small rituals. On Thursdays, they danced in the living room again, jazz classics playing softly on the stereo, their bodies swaying close, as though rediscovering each other with each step. Their first dance back felt awkward. Emily's cheek brushed Jacob's shoulder, and she sobbed softly, overwhelmed by the closeness. Jacob held her tightly, whispering apologies into her hair, and for the first time in months, she felt something beyond anger, something fragile but hopeful.
They reinstated Sunday dinner rituals. Jacob would cook breakfast on Saturday mornings, egg sandwiches with avocado, and Emily would make buttermilk pancakes. They'd talk, really talk, over coffee. Jacob used to share details about his work. Now he also shared his fears, and she responded with empathy rather than defensiveness. But progress was neither linear nor easy. There were setbacks. One night in early November, Jacob left his phone on the counter as usual. Emily, still riddled with doubts, looked at the lock screen, curious. She saw a new text from Lisa. Just wanted to say hi? Shock spiked through her. She snapped the phone up, raced to the living room where Jacob was reading a book. "Why is she calling you?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling. "Don't you have enough on your plate?" Jacob flinched. She's just... sorry. She told me she regrets everything and wanted closure. She said she'd move on, but I didn't know how to respond. His eyes were haunted. Emily paced. "You should have told me. I shouldn't have to find this out like this." "I'm sorry," he said again softly. "I didn't want to upset you." She stopped pacing and turned to face him. "I'm always upset, exactly because you keep secrets." Her voice cracked. "I can't live like this. I need to trust you again." He laid the phone on the coffee table. "I understand. I'll tell you everything. From now on, no more secrets. I'll block her number myself." She stared at him for a moment, saw the sincerity in his eyes. She nodded slowly. "Block her number." That night, they sat together as Jacob dialed Lisa's number one last time and told her to stop contacting him. Emily watched, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. Relief that it was over, sadness for what they had lost, and a glimmer of pride that they were tackling the hard things together. 6.4 Small Victories. By late November, the leaves had mostly fallen, leaving the backyard's maples skeletal against the gray sky. Emily and Jacob, despite occasional tremors of doubt, had begun to make incremental progress. On one especially cold afternoon, Emily arrived home early from work. She found Jacob in the kitchen, hair tousled, flour dust on his forehead. He was kneading dough for homemade dinner rolls. The scent of yeast and warm bread filled the kitchen. "Hey, Em," he said, flashing her a grin that made her heart flutter with a mix of fondness and caution. "You made rolls?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah," he replied, pulling out a sheet pan of golden brown rolls. Thought it might be nice. Something simple. I missed cooking for you." She took a roll, tearing off a piece. Steam curled up like a soft whisper. She took a bite, melted on her tongue. For a moment, the weight in her chest lifted. Just slightly. "It's perfect," she said, and leaned over to kiss him on the cheek. They stayed in that moment, the rawness of earlier weeks softened by the warmth of the kitchen and the scent of fresh bread. That evening, after dinner, they settled on the couch under a shared blanket. A documentary about wild wolves played on the TV, but they were both absorbed in each other's presence. Emily rested her head on Jacob's shoulder. For the first time in a long while, she believed they might make it through this.
7. Chapter 7, The Ongoing Struggle. 7.1, Lingering Doubt. Though the initial shock of betrayal had passed, the aftermath reverberated through Emily's thoughts like tremors. On December 1st, she found herself scrolling through photographs on their shared cloud album. She clicked on a picture from their 10th anniversary trip to Napa Valley. Vineyards rolling under sunlight, Jacob's arm around her shoulders as she laughed. She paused at that image, heart twisting. How do you reconcile the love you once shared with the pain of betrayal? That weekend, they visited a local cafe, Maplewood Roasters, sitting in a corner booth. The barista, a college kid named Derek, the same one from Lisa's office lobby, greeted Jacob with a nod. Emily felt her stomach drop, but Jacob gave Derek a brief wave. Derek handed over their coffees, Emily's black drip, Jacob's cappuccino with a heart in the foam. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping. Then Jacob said quietly, "I know seeing Derek again might be tough." She nodded. "It's a jolt." He reached across the table. "We'll face these things together." Emily exhaled. "I want to believe that." He squeezed her hand. "You can. I'll keep showing you that I mean it." But doubt still struck her unexpectedly. Sometimes at 2 a.m. when she woke up, sometimes when she saw a couple holding hands on the street, and sometimes when Lisa's name would drift through her mind like a ghost. Each reminder felt like a thunderclap that could have been replaced by me.
In therapy, Dr. Patel asked Emily to keep a doubt journal, writing down moments when suspicion flared, the date, the trigger, how she felt, and how she managed the feeling. By recognizing these moments, he said, you can learn to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this real evidence, or is it my mind playing tricks? She started the journal religiously. December 3rd, saw Jacob's bookmark on his browser still open to an old presentation. Thought maybe he was going to meet her at the office. Turned out he was reviewing for tomorrow's pitch. December 8th, received a call from Lisa's fiancé. Apparently not her fiancé, but that's how she introduced herself at a holiday party. Her fiancé asked Jacob to explain why he still followed Lisa on social media. Jacob had few seconds to explain and apologized to both of them. Emily spent the entire day replaying the interaction. December 11th, Lisa's face popped up in a mutual friend's Instagram story. Autoplay. Emily clicked away, but the panic spiked again. Through writing it down, she began to see that most evidence of betrayal was actually her wounded mind searching for patterns. While some reminders stung, they no longer wrecked her whole day. She was learning to breathe, ground herself, and ask, is this a new sign or just a memory flaring up?
7.2. Holidays and Old Wounds. In mid-December, the tension of the holidays arrived. Invitations to Christmas parties, office gatherings, tree lighting ceremonies. Each one felt like a potential minefield. One invitation carried special weight. Lisa's holiday party at her parents' home in Shaker Heights. Emily stared at the envelope for days, dread pooling in her stomach. She couldn't bring herself to cross that threshold again. Jacob suggested politely that they skip it. Emily felt relief. She didn't want to face Lisa again in any capacity, even to show she was fine. On December 24th, they decorated their tree together, silent at first, focused on stringing lights and placing glass ornaments carefully. The tree's reflection glowed softly in the windows. Jacob put on a holiday record, Ella Fitzgerald singing Winter Wonderland. Emily draped a strand of garland, shook her head in gentle exasperation when they began to tangle. He laughed, brushing back a strand of hair from her face. For that moment, she felt warmth, like maybe they could build something new from the wreckage. But the fragile piece shattered the next morning. She found a half-empty wine glass on the counter, lipstick smudged at its rim. Her heart clenched. A woman's red lipstick. She tried to believe it was one of her own, but when she swiped the glass across her palm, her fingers smelled faintly of cinnamon and bergamot, what she recognized as Lisa's signature perfume. She'd smelled it on Jacob's jacket collar months ago. Jacob emerged from the bedroom, sleep tussling his curls. "Morning," he yawned. "You up for mimosas later?" Emily gestured toward the glass. "Why is there lipstick on this?" He saw it then, eyes widening. I don't know." He stepped forward, but she backed away. "It's hers," she said, voice low. "It's her lipstick." Jacob's face contorted. "Emily, I swear I didn't—" "Don't you dare lie again," she snapped. "I'm done." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to hear your excuses." She stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. He called after her, "It's not what you think!" But she didn't stop. She sat on the patio, the morning air chill against her cheeks, tears streaming as she realized that in spite of his promises, he still let Lisa come knocking in the margins of their life. She felt as though she were drowning in a house that was supposed to be her refuge. Jacob joined her a few minutes later, breathless. "Emily," he said softly, "I swear I haven't seen Lisa since I blocked her number." Emily looked at him, eyes red. "Then why is her perfume on your jacket?" He lifted it off the chair. She saw a small tag on the cuff, "Dry clean only, yesterday's dirt cleaners." A note was pinned to the sleeve. "Thanks for the last-minute drop-off, L." He traced the note between his fingers. "She dropped clothes off for cleaning 2 days ago. I totally forgot and just picked them up now." She stared at him for a long moment. The tears slowed. Her heart pounded in her chest. She inhaled, tasting the cold winter air, trying to steady herself. Could it really be just an innocent explanation? Because deep down, a small part of her wanted to believe it. She reached out and touched the note. "You didn't open it?" "No, I just grabbed the bag and left. I forgot it was her laundry." She studied him, watching his face, searching for any sign of duplicity. But it wasn't there, only naked remorse and genuine confusion. She traced the words, "Thanks for the last-minute drop-off," with her fingertip, then slowly nodded. "Okay." They both exhaled. He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. She let him, but inside she was braced, as though on watch. She wasn't sure if she would ever fully trust again, but the sunlight over the patio felt reassuring in that moment, like a new page might yet be written.
8.1 Acceptance and Grace. By early January 2025, Emily and Jacob had settled into a tentative new rhythm. They continued therapy weekly, sometimes alone, sometimes together. They rediscovered small pleasures, making breakfast together on Saturday mornings, walking Max through Edgewater Park after work, and sharing iced lattes at Maplewood Roasters on Fridays. Their anniversary, March 12th, loomed on the calendar. They had planned a small trip to Asheville, North Carolina, to spend a long weekend in the mountains. Emily had hesitated, unsure if she was ready for a romantic getaway. But Jacob insisted, claiming they needed time away from the triggers and memories of Cleveland to reconnect. On March 12th, they boarded a late afternoon flight.
The moment the plane climbed above the clouds, Emily closed her eyes and exhaled, feeling a tension she didn't even know she'd held. She looked at Jacob, who squeezed her hand, and she felt a tiny flicker of hope. In Asheville, they rented a cozy cabin overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. The cabin had a stone fireplace, a plush couch, and a small porch where they could watch early spring twitch into life. Buds on trees, songbirds returning. They spent the first evening building a fire, sipping bourbon and hot chocolate, talking in hushed voices about how far they'd come. Emily admitted that she'd been terrified of doing anything normal again, holding his hand, sharing a bed. But every time she leaned into him, she felt a little safer. Jacob listened quietly, his arm around her. That night, as they slept, she woke once at 3 a.m. and found him staring at her, concern in his eyes. He whispered, "I'm right here." She felt a rush of protectiveness for him, too, a recognition that he was as fragile as she was.
8.2. Friends, Family, and Forgiveness. Upon returning to Cleveland, their friends and family cautiously celebrated their small victories. Jacob's sister, Teresa, hugged Emily like she was a long-lost sister, praising her resilience. Emily's parents offered dinners, cards, and lots of listening. Jacob's parents visited in April, bringing framed photos of Emily and Jacob from happier times, their wedding day, their first apartment in Columbus, a summer barbecue at the lake. At a family dinner, Emily surprised herself by laughing at one of her father's jokes. The room felt warm, safe, full of people who loved her regardless of her choices. For so long, she had felt isolated, stuck in a private hell. Now she realized that hope could return. In May, they attended a small party hosted by their neighbor, Angela, who lived 2 houses down. Their old circle of friends gathered on the deck under twinkling patio lights. Emily introduced Jacob to Angela's new baby, 3 months old, a chance to cradle someone so innocent and witness pure trust. Lisa's name never came up. They had agreed they would avoid her entirely. She had switched firms in January and moved to Chicago for a fresh start. Emily learned through mutual friends that Lisa had gotten engaged in April to a software engineer, someone Lisa had started dating in February. The news stung at first, like a fresh brush of regret. But over time, realizing that the messy chapter had closed allowed Emily to let go of her residual anger. 8.3. Testing the New Normal. In June, on the first full weekend of summer, Emily found herself planning to attend a work event at a Cleveland rooftop bar. Normally, she and Jacob would go together, clinking glasses, sharing inside jokes. This time, she invited her coworker Megan, asking Jacob to stay home. She felt anxious. Re-entering the social world as the wife of the one who cheated felt precarious. But Megan promised to stand by her, deflecting questions, making jokes about Jacob's weird work schedule. They arrived at 7 p.m. The bar overlooked the city skyline, the sun setting in a wash of pink and gold. Emily sipped a mocktail, Megan a gin fizz. Coworkers mingled, compliments on Emily's dress, murmurs about how Jacob's been on quite a journey. Emily laughed along, but inside she bristled. People whispered she was over it because Jacob had apologized. They didn't know the nights of tears, the therapy sessions, the fighting for every scrap of trust. Megan leaned in. "Ignore them. You look amazing, by the way." Emily smiled. The combination of breeze, lights, and supportive friend gave her a little freedom. She chatted nervously, sharing an inside joke with one colleague about Jacob's secret snack drawer, and was startled when people truly laughed, like maybe people had moved on too. Later, she saw Jacob waiting outside the bar when she emerged at 10 p.m. His face lit up when he saw her. He offered her a small bouquet of daisies, a callback to the ones he threw in the sink last December. She took them in surprise. "I know it's corny, but I wanted to show you I still remember our inside jokes." She smiled, genuinely. "Thank you." They held hands under the streetlights, walking toward home. She realized that while not everything was fixed, nights like these, simple, messy, imperfect, felt like evidence they could build a life again. Chapter 9. Full Circle. 9.1.
the new rituals. By late June, 9 months had passed since Emily's discovery of the affair in that office lobby. They had built new rituals to replace the old ones broken by betrayal. Thursday night dances had become Friday evening walks down Lakewood Park, stopping for ice cream cones. Sunday morning now meant homemade waffles, not rushed breakfasts. They had even started a monthly date night on the third Friday. No phones, no distractions, just dinner and conversation, always ending with a short walk under the stars. They attended therapy less frequently, once a month, to check in, celebrate progress, and navigate new issues. Dr. Patel gave them assignments. Write down 3 things you appreciate about each other this week, or plan a surprise for your partner. They learned to speak honestly. Emily learned to say, "I feel anxious when you're late without notice," and Jacob learned to respond, "I see that bothers you. I'll text if I'm running late." They accepted that building trust was an ongoing process, not a one-time act. 9.2. The Unexpected Invitation. On June 30th, the Saturday before Independence Day, Emily received an email from Lisa, marked, "For your eyes only." Her heart sank. She stared at the subject line, "I'm sorry, for what it's worth." For a moment, panic welled. She folded her arms, jaw tight. She considered deleting it, but after a deep breath, she opened it. Subject, "For your eyes only." From Lisa Hernandez. Dear Emily, I know you probably never want to hear from me again. I don't blame you if you hit delete. But before July 4th, I felt compelled to reach out. I'm truly sorry for everything that happened between Jacob and me. I was selfish, manipulative, and cruel. When we were involved, I was flattered that a married man showed me attention, but I never stopped to consider what I was doing to your life. I moved to Chicago to escape everything that reminded me of what we'd done. I've been in therapy, working on my own issues, family trauma, self-esteem, codependency. I don't know what you think of me, or if you think of me at all, but I want you to know that I've changed. I never meant to ruin your marriage or your peace of mind. I know that can't be undone. There's nothing I can say to make up for the betrayal, but I wish you truly well. If you ever want closure or to ask questions, I'll answer as honestly as I can. If you don't, I understand. In that case, please just know I'm sorry, deeply sorry. Sincerely, Lisa. Emily sat back in her chair, eyes raw with emotion. The letter felt like a mirror, reflecting the past she had fought so hard to overcome. A small knot twisted in her chest. Reading Lisa's words, she realized she had never thought of Lisa as a human being in pain, only as the enemy who nearly destroyed her world. She replaced her phone in her lap, alerting Jacob to check your email. Within minutes, he was at her side, concern etched on his face. She handed him her phone. He read the letter, his face crumpling. I'm sorry," he said. I didn't know she felt that way, but this doesn't change anything between us, right?" Emily considered his question. She remembered how far they'd come and thought of Lisa not as the woman who took my husband, but as the woman who was once a destructive presence in our lives, who is now trying to apologize. She unexpectedly felt a twinge of compassion, yet she also recognized the importance of boundaries. She didn't need to enter further dialogue with Lisa. "She's welcome to her apology," Emily said quietly, "but we're not going to reply. We've moved on." She leaned against Jacob. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close.
9.3. A Summer 4th. July 4th dawned bright and hot. The neighborhood was alive with flags, lawn chairs, and with smell of charcoal. Emily and Jacob had planned a backyard barbecue. They invited a handful of friends, Marta, Megan, and Sophie, plus a neighbor couple whose names they barely remembered. They placed a new American flag in their front yard, and the air felt festive. They spent the afternoon grilling burgers and veggies on their Weber. Jacob fussed over the char, whistling nonsense tunes, while Emily arranged a picnic blanket under the big maple tree. Max ran circles in the yard, tongue lolling, chasing the neighbor's dog. Children from down the street raced bikes and squealed with laughter. Around 7 p.m., Marta arrived with a fruit platter. Megan brought pasta salad. Sophie brought brownies shaped like stars. The four of them chatted in the yard, cold drinks in hand, gossiping gently, making jokes about Jacob's grill master routine. He laughed readily, making s'mores at a small fire pit, while Emily watched, brimmed with gratitude that they could share this peaceful evening. As dusk approached, they moved chairs onto the driveway to watch the neighborhood fireworks. Gentle pops and crackles overhead, red, white, and blue bouquets blossoming in the sky. Emily leaned her head on Jacob's shoulder. He held her hand, thumb gently stroking her knuckles. They watched the lights burst, and for the first time in 10 months, Emily felt truly unburdened. She felt a sense of forgiveness, not just for Jacob, but for herself, for having doubted her worth. A final firework glowed overhead, showering sparks like a slow-motion waterfall. Emily closed her eyes, letting the flashes imprint on her memory. She breathed deeply, felt Jacob shift so he could kiss her on the temple, and smiled. They had endured betrayal, pain, and uncertainty, but in the summer heat, under the fireworks, they had forged something stronger, a fragile, precious bond rebuilt on vulnerability, honesty, and love that had been tested in the fire.
10. Epilogue. Moving forward. It has been a year since that September night when Emily discovered Jacob's betrayal. Their road to recovery was neither straight nor easy. There were nights when Emily woke with the taste of tears on her lips, convinced she'd never find peace. There were mornings when Jacob couldn't bear to look at himself in the mirror, despising his cowardice. There were moments when Lisa's voice echoed in the hallways of their minds, taunts of, "You almost lost him," and "He chose me." Yet through it all, they learned to communicate in ways they never had, transparently, compassionately, without burying fears. They discovered that marriage is not a static contract, but an evolving partnership that requires constant nourishment. Love, they realize, was not just a feeling, but a choice, made over and over in the face of hardship. A few days ago, they celebrated Emily's 35th birthday. Jacob surprised her with a weekend trip to Lake Placid, New York, an area they'd always talked about visiting but never managed to. They spent the day hiking along Mirror Lake, the mountain peaks reflecting in the crystalline water as though offering a symbol of clarity. In the evening, they dined at a small bistro overlooking the lake, sharing a bottle of Pinot Noir. Jacob raised his glass to her and said, "To my brave, beautiful wife, thank you for choosing me a second time." Emily smiled, tears glistening. "And to my devoted husband, thank you for fighting for us." They clinked glasses, the soft clink resonating with promise. As they watched the sunset, she thought of how far they had come, the tangled lies of the past, the loneliness of separation, the painstaking rebuilding of trust. She realized they could never erase the scars, but scars could form new patterns, a map of survival, resilience, and courage. This story is not a fairy tale. It's a testament to the messy, painful reality of loving someone who betrays you and still choosing to fight for love. It's a reminder that some relationships can survive the unforgivable, but only if both partners are willing to own their mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and commit to change. In a world that often tells us if someone cheats, it's over, Emily and Jacob's journey shows that healing is possible, even if it's not guaranteed. If you, dear reader, find yourself caught in the sharp edges of betrayal, know this: your feelings are valid. Seek help. Surround yourself with people who support you. Take time to grieve, to heal, to rediscover yourself. And if you decide to stay, be prepared for the long haul of rebuilding trust. If you decide to leave, know that walking away is not a failure. It can be an act of courage and self-love. As Emily and Jacob toast their glasses in Lake Placid, Max snores contentedly at their feet, the early stars emerging overhead, and the promise of tomorrow wraps around them like a blanket. They have no illusions about the future. They know challenges still lie ahead. But for now, they have each other, and that is enough.